Welcome everyone to another video with Better Picks. Hope this finds you all well. Today we're going to go through a brief introduction to Premiere Pro. This is the main editing program that I use for video production, and I just wanted to start the process of creating videos that looks at the video editing process. And the platform that I use at present, as I mentioned, is Premiere Pro. Video editing can be a little bit overwhelming when you first start looking at it because it is a far more complicated and complex process than editing photos. However, I think if you just start to take things nice and slowly and just give yourself a gentle introduction, you can start to learn all of the tools, starting with the basics, obviously, within Premiere, and you can build yourself up to be able to create more complex projects using more assets and obviously longer video pieces as well. So to start with, what I'm going to do is just to create a few videos that will look at the workspace within Premiere. There are, of course, now with Premiere Pro default workspaces that come with the program. However, as you'll see, you can actually create your own workspaces as well based on your own specific needs and the layout that you would like to have for each of the tools that are available within Premiere Pro. Now, this can be determined by a number of things. At its most basic level, are you working on one screen or two? In which case, working across multiple screens will allow you to have different panels on those different screens and have a fully customized layout. As I have mentioned, it's entirely up to you how you do that, but we're going to start with the default layout with Premiere. Now, this may be different depending on the version of Premiere that you have, but if you get to know each of the panels within the Premiere workspace, you'll be able to quickly see that you can pretty much have a layout specifically for what your needs are. Okay, so we're just going to start with a sample clip, and the reason that I'm going to put a sample clip into this particular project is because it helps to show exactly what each of the panels do. It's very difficult to kind of demonstrate something unless you have a sample clip. So much more will make sense once we import a clip to work with. So the first way that you can import a clip into Premiere Pro is simply by going up to File and then clicking on Import, so Control I. I'm working on a Windows-based system, just for everybody out there who would probably have already realized that. But that's certainly the first way that you can import a clip. Another way that you can import a clip is if you come down here on the left-hand side at the bottom through Media Browser, and that just basically gives you all of the folder structure that you would normally experience within a Windows system, same for a Mac, where you can then navigate to the particular folder that you would like to import a file from. The other way that you can bring a clip into Premiere is to simply navigate to the specific folder, click and drag into Premiere, into that test project that I have set up at the moment, and you can see the import file dialog box automatically pops up. Excellent, so you can see that clip is now imported into Premiere, and it shows a little bit of information about the nature of the clip, the resolution and the frame rate, which I'll be talking about in a later video about what all that means, because there is a little bit to consider. But you can see that just on the bottom left hand side here, it's got the file name. It's a .mp4 file, which often is also referred to as a H.264. It's 3840 by 2160 pixels, and that means it's an Ultra HD clip. You can also see that the clip has what's called 50p, and that basically means that it's been filmed at 50 frames per second. Now, we won't get into too much of that on this video, but that's just worth noting. The 48,000 hertz is and 16-bit is the quality of the audio that's also been captured. Now, just on the right hand side at the bottom of the screen, you can see it's got timeline here and no sequence. Now that's where we place all of our assets to edit. So placing those assets, if I just click and drag that asset, you can see it's got the hand and the little plus symbol, and I drop that there. You can see it's automatically created a timeline, so there's been some changes just by having that clip onto the timeline. So now we have what's called a sequence, and that sequence is basically a timeline of where the video assets will sit as we edit those assets into a video. And just up the top here, we have what's called the program panel, and that's a preview of what the video will actually look like. So wherever the cursor, you can see as I drag it along, there's a time scale there as well, and that's in minutes and seconds and frames. As I drag that along, you can see the video is playing up there, and we get a preview of what the video is that's being played or edited on that specific timeline. Now, if we go down and have a look at the timeline a little bit further, we have just here on the left hand side what's called V1, V2 and V3, and that's video line 1, 2 and 3, or video track 1, 2 and 3. And then down the bottom we have A1, A2, A3 and A4. That's the audio tracks 1, 2, 3 and 4. So you can see that allows us to have multiple video tracks and multiple audio tracks. If I just click and drag that video track up to the next one, you can see you can place it on any of those track spaces within the sequence. And in fact, if I want to have a fourth video track, then I can just click it up another one, and you can see that fourth video track is automatically created. Now, same with the audio, you can click and drag that audio down onto 2, 3, 4 and 5. And again, if I click that down and drag it a little bit further down, it will create extra audio channels for me to work with. But we're going to keep it simple for now. We're going to keep the video on V1 and the audio on A1 and A2. So, as you can see, as I mentioned early in the video, people get a little bit overwhelmed with the complexity of video editing, and it's easy to understand why, because there is a lot to consider. I'm just going to cover off a couple of things within the sequence that we need to consider. If we have a look at this little icon here and we hover over it, it says toggle track output. If I click on that, it will actually turn off that particular track. Now that track is still there. If I click and drag it up to video 2, which hasn't been turned off, you can see it reappears. Now if I click and drag that down, turn that back on, and that's good to go. Now with the audio, you have a very similar option, but you also have an extra option, and there's two. You can either mute the track or solo the track. If we mute the track, it's going to mute. I've just clicked on that, you can see it's highlighted. It's going to mute any audio that's on A1. I can simply unclick that to bring it back to an active status. With the solo track, if I click on solo, it means it's only going to play the audio on that particular track. So if you've got a very complex setup for audio at any given time, but you only want to listen to one audio line, you can simply click on solo, and you're good to go. And of course, turning that off takes it back to being available for all audio tracks. All audio tracks will be heard when you play the video. So looking up at the program preview here, we have a play button, and that just allows us to play and stop the video at any stage. You can see there's a bunch of other tools that are available within the program. However, for this one, as I mentioned, we're just going to go for a quicker video and a simple description of the layout of Premiere. Now, between that project where we imported our assets earlier and between the timeline, you can see there's a panel here that has a selection of tools. The two tools that we're going to look at for now is the selection tool, which the shortcut is V, exactly the same style of selection tool that you see in Photoshop and other Adobe products. And we're going to come down to the razor tool, which is the shortcut C. And I often use the shortcut C, I think of cut, which is a terminology that was used in traditional film production and editing processes. So that's the way that I remember. So the razor tool, the shortcut is C. And as I've mentioned in other videos, I'm a big user of shortcuts to help speed up the workflow. All right, so if we come over to our right hand side down the bottom here, you can see that there's another panel, and if we play the video, we can see that that's actually our audio levels. So that just allows us to keep a monitor on our audio levels. Generally speaking, I aim for audio levels to be heard clearly to sit around -6 to -12. But of course, depending on the project, depending on the needs of a particular audio track, it may be quite a bit lower than that if it's a background sound or something that is less important but adds atmosphere to the video. Now, up on the top left-hand side, I'm going to click on a little tab, which you can see there's multiple tabs there, called Effects Controls. And this basically, when we have a clip selected, allows us to start making adjustments to those particular clips. So there's a whole bunch of options there that are available. However, we can add other effects like color or audio or volume. There's a whole bunch of options that we have to add to a particular clip. And when we add any effect to that clip or that audio channel, then we edit those particular effects up here under the effects controls. As the name suggests, it controls the effects that you've applied to a clip or an audio line. Alright, so we're just going to head back down to the bottom left hand corner. You can see over here we have a number of tabs within this panel. And if you look on the right hand side, there's two little arrows that point to the right. Now if I click on those, it actually tells us all of the options that exist within that panel. And the one that I want to have a look at is effects. Now, the effects are all the effects that you would want to apply to a particular clip or an audio clip. So that could be a color adjustment, it could be a speed adjustment, it could be a volume or an equalizer adjustment that you apply to an audio clip. Anything that you want to affect the look, the sound of a particular video or audio clip, this is where you'll find it. Now, I could create an entire video that's hours and hours long on each one of those effects. For now, I just want you to keep in mind that that's where you find it, okay? So you can see we have presets, we have Lumetri presets. Lumetri is your color adjustments. We have audio effects, obviously affects the audio. Audio transitions, so from one audio clip to another, you can apply transitions, which we'll go into a little bit further in other videos. We have video effects, so color, speed, blur, sharpen, color correction, image control. There's a whole bunch of options in there. As you can see, noise, perspective, transform, transition, a whole bunch of options there to look at. The video effects, and the last one is video transition. So transitioning between one video to the next, there's a whole bunch of effects that you can apply in how that transition looks, not just as a straight cut. Okay, so that covers the basics for the layout of Premiere. What you would have noticed up the top is we have a number of options: learning, assembly, editing, color, effects, audio, graphics, libraries, and then a couple of names there on the right hand side. Now, what this is just the first list of options there are just default options for the layout of the various panels and various tabs within Premiere Pro. So you can change, for example, if you're making color adjustments, you can change that so that you now have all of your color adjustments available and color tools through the Lumetri color available to you. And all this is some default workspaces that Premiere has put into, or Adobe has put into Premiere to help you with your workflow. Now, the wonderful thing about Premiere is you can actually create your own workspaces and then you can save them. So if you find a particular process of working to be more efficient in terms of the layout of where everything is within Premiere, then you can set that up and save it as your own. This may be dependent on a number of things. For example, at the moment I'm working on a single screen. However, sometimes I might work on multiple screens and I might have some panels, some tools on one screen and different panels and different tools on a different screen specific to that setup. So always keep in mind that, It's a great layout that comes as a default, however you can change that layout. So what I'm going to show you now is the default layout that I generally use for editing, and that's just listed under my name, Damien. So you can see that that's really changed quite a bit of the layout. I mean, there's some things that are still in the same location. For example, if we start on the top left hand side, we have the effects panel, which we went through before. That's where you have all your audio and video effects. We have the project with all of the assets for that project. So all of the video, audio files, graphics, or still photographs sit. We have effects controls, so when we have a particular clip selected, which you can see it's highlighted in white there, then I can go in and control all of the effects that are sitting on that clip or that video at any one time. The program is in the same place, so that's obviously the preview of the actual video as we're working on it, so that's a preview of the final result. Top right hand side we have our audio monitoring. Bottom left hand side I have the history panel, but I've got a couple of other options there as well. If I hit those two right hand arrows, media browser, libraries, info, markers and history. Now history is the history of edits that I've made, which you can go back in if you want to at any stage, but history is generally the default option or tab within that panel that I have set up. If we move across to the right, you can see we have our timeline there with our video and audio ready to go. I find that's just a good place for the way that I work to have that sitting. And then on the bottom right hand side we have all of our tools ready to be used at any stage. So for me, this is the layout that I enjoy working with. However, it's entirely up to you. This is not the way that you should have your workspace set up, but it's certainly the way that you can if that's the way that you want to. So if you set up, for example, a particular workspace and you want to save it, you just go up to Windows, Workspaces, and Save as a new workspace. Then when we click on that, it will ask for a name, you hit OK, and you're good to go. It's that simple. Now, something you would have noticed me doing throughout this video is you have the option when you hover your mouse over the border between two panels, you have the option to adjust the size, and you can do that depending on what your needs are based on your screen size and the layout that you've chosen. If, say, for example, you have a video that you're working on where you have many video clips, many audio clips, and you need more space so that you can view that timeline easily, then you have the option to make that a little bit bigger, which is a great thing. As I mentioned, you can move sideways, up and down, increasing or decreasing the size of each of those panels to really customize the workspace, keeping in mind that you may have a workspace that you enjoy using, but you may also adjust depending on the type of project that you're working on. At the end of the day, it's entirely up to you which way you want to go and how you want to have your workspace set up. The best thing to do is to develop a workspace that you find efficient and easy to work with, where your assets are easy to find and your project is easy to edit. Because the less time that you spend editing, the more time you have to go out filming, which I think is a great thing. Hope you've enjoyed this introduction to the workspace with Premiere Pro, and look forward to seeing you in the future. We have many more videos within the video space that are coming out soon. Thanks very much and take care.